Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a New Year's episode of Barnyard Language. I guess last week was our actual technically first episode of the new year, but this is the first time that Katie and I are actually recording in the new year. The calendar's flipped over. Things are fresh. I'm about to haul the Christmas tree out of my house. Katie, what is happening at your place?
Not much. I took the week off work to deal with my burnout in the universe, largely based on neurodivergence and masking too much and trying to act quote-unquote normal. I'm working hard for the last several years now at realizing when it's becoming a problem and then doing something about it before all hell breaks loose, which is a crazy new thing I'm trying, where you deal with stuff before it's an emergency. So I took the week off to sort of regroup and throw away lots of stuff and enjoy the peace and quiet and catch up on some of that administrative shit that never gets done because you have to do all the shit that has to get done every day, and so that you never get done all the extra stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like you're doing your year end.
Yes, I'm doing my year-end bookkeeping of my entire life.
Yeah.
Exactly, I like that way to put it. The guys are hauling cattle off to the sale barn today. The price is way up, I think. I don't keep that close a track of it, but it seems high.
And how many are we talking from your place?
6, 4, I don't know. It's not that many, but when you only have 40-some animals, it's a decent chunk. It is a cold but incredibly sunny and beautiful day as we get in the Midwest, which is lovely. Better than all the gray. And other than that, it's first day back to school for the kiddos. One of them was excited. The other one, less so. But hopefully they will both have good days.
But they're both healthy enough to go. So that feels like an accomplishment too, after the Christmas that you had.
Yes, thank God. Yeah, we had COVID before Christmas and a stomach bug after Christmas. It was a long week, let's put it that way. With a holiday right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how are things at your place, Arlene?
Well, it's also the first day back at school for my kiddos. We're recording on a Monday, so that means that the house is quiet at the moment. My daughter drove back to university yesterday, so she's back in her house there and starting a new semester. And the rest of the kids went back to school this morning. I will say that now that my kids are older, the Christmas holidays are not as chaotic as they used to be, for sure. Some people sleep in. We have help with chores now with older kids, where before it was fitting chores in kind of around kids and childcare and all that kind of stuff. So that was nice. But yeah, it's still nice to get back into the regular routine and get everybody back where they're supposed to be for 5 days of the week. Hopefully, we'll see if the snow days start to pile up here soon. But so far, so good. And this past weekend, we had our barn party, which is something that we've done for the last couple of years, and it was a lot of fun. We had lots of friends and neighbors and family all come to hang out with us. So we kind of started because we were looking at doing a Christmas party, and then December gets so booked up, and then we said, why not wait and do it the weekend after New Year's? So yeah, that's been our tradition the last few years. And it's an interesting crowd because we start in the afternoon, so people are coming kind of during milking, and then it extends until the early hours of the morning. So the crowd evolves as the day goes on. So yeah, if you were there at 4:00 when we started, it would not quite be the same party as at 2:00 in the morning when people left. But yeah, it was fun. But then you realize after several hours, it's like, wow, we've just been like going for many hours in a row. So it's a lot of peopling.
I was going to say, you don't make them just stay and help milk in the morning? Because, by 2 a.m., you might as well just keep them there.
The invitation does say that it goes until morning chores. So if anyone is still there when the milker pump goes on in the morning, then they have to help. But no, there was nobody still there at milking time. So
I think that was the last time I really tied one on was working at a dairy farm, and something about that realizing that you're going to have to go straight from your night of revelry to putting on milkers just really kind of takes the joy out of it.
Yeah, that's right. If you feel joy normally waking up to milk cows, I don't know. That's not my usual vibe, but some people love it. The joy out of the party, yes, yeah.
Oh no, I meant takes the joy out of the revelry. But yeah. The barns I've seen in the States do not have as much extra floor space as the 2 barns that I saw in Canada.
Two barns, yeah.
Very small sample size, obviously. But for listeners who haven't seen Arlene's barn, I guess, there's like space that does not have cows or running equipment like directly in it. And even your space where the wash facilities and the bulk tank and the pumps and stuff are is substantially more open than what is common around here. So when you envision a barn party, it is not what I at least had envisioned before I went to one in Canada. Let's put it that way.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, we did design kind of like office space and reception space in our barn when we built it, with the intention that we could use it for gatherings, 4-H meetings, like, other kinds of, association meetings, that kind of thing. So yes, it does have kind of an area that's heated, not all the time, but can be heated and is not, always occupied with animals. So that's where the food is and where a lot of the people who need to stay warm hang out. But there was a good number of people who were in with the cows too.
Your cows are delightful. So, and your barn is clean and warm as well, I guess. We don't see as many tie stalls here either. So I guess, here a barn party would be hanging out in a parlor where it's cold.
Yeah, or in the feed alley, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't sound delightful. And I guess, too, when I think of the space where the bulk tank is and that, the milk room, as it were, I think of it with everything running, which also does not seem conducive to social gatherings.
Yeah, not good for conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, because something about all that banging metallic chemical smell doesn't really say festive to me, but Canadians are different. So that's what I've learned in the last 4 years of doing this show. Canadians are different.
Still, small sample size,
Yeah.
but I guess at this point you have met a lot of Canadians virtually. So
Well, certainly more than I ever had previously.
that is true, yeah. We're making our way across the country. All right, well, why don't we introduce our guest for this week?
All right.
Today, we are excited to be talking to Shohni Christensen, who is joining us from Arizona. And we start each of our interviews with the exact same question. So this is your way to introduce yourself to our listeners. So we always ask, what are you growing? So our farming people, that's usually crops and livestock, but also includes kids and businesses and all kinds of other stuff. So what are you growing?
Well, we're growing the kids, but we're wannabes. We want to grow all the crops and the fields and the hays, but we're mostly livestock. We do cows and pigs, sheep, chicken, turkey.
That's still a lot of things. So I'm going to start with the first thing you said. How many kids and what ages are we talking about?
We had 5 kids in 6 years.
Wowza. Yeah.
So, yes.
For our listeners, you can't see the look of terror that just crossed my face, but yeah, it's
a shit show. That's what it is.
We should give medals to people who do stuff like that. Like, we should give medals to everyone who's dealing with children in any capacity.
Oh, yeah. All parents and farmers deserve medals anyway, but extra medals.
But you get like an extra ribbon or something for each kid, I think.
My grandpa put it best. He's like, you did this to yourself. I'm like, I did, didn't I?
Do people ask you if you know how this happened?
Oh my gosh, all the time. And are these all yours? I'm like, no, I bought them from Kmart.
No, I found this one at the grocery store, but it was on sale, so we kept it.
Yeah. It looks a lot like the others, though, so I kept it.
It was a buy one, get one.
No, I just thought it would be a fun challenge to see how many kids I could take to the store with me.
No, we've got five, and the oldest is 13, the youngest is 7, and they're all about a year and a half from each other.
Right. And so you talked about different kinds of livestock and, are we talking 1, 10, 100? Like what are some of our, you don't need to have exact numbers, but approximate numbers of different kinds of things. And because we're talking to farmers, of course, people want to know breeds if that's important to you. So,
Yeah. So if you ask my husband, I shaved down my numbers when I talk to him so that he doesn't know how many I have. He won't listen. So I can tell you the real deal. We run, right now we've got about, by the time they all calve, we'll have about 20 Dexters. We run Dexter cattle. They're a lot smaller. We like them for both the meat and the milk purposes, but they're small enough that my kids can handle. I'm not worried about my kids being out there in the pen, even with our bull. We run about anywhere from 30 to 60, depending on farrowing season. We do Berkshire pigs. We've got, I don't even know how many lambs, too many lambs because my kids show them. And I don't even know what breeds they are. They're just my show lambs, my kids' show lambs. And then whatever we don't show, we process and eat. And then what else do we have? We've got the Cornish cross chickens, the meat turkeys. What are they? Bronze breasted or white breasted turkeys. And so we got a little of everything.
yes. So when it comes to farms, people are doing lots of different things in terms of whether it's just a hobby, whether you're making a living from it, all that kind of stuff. So when you're talking about processing animals, are they for farmers market? Are you direct marketing? Are you just eating a lot of meat in your own family? What is your current setup?
All of the above. So we sell wholesale to a few different vendors and stores. We do the farmers market. We have our own little customer base that we sell direct to consumer, and we're big carnivores. So all of the above.
So, Shawnee, I'm going to throw a question in here. How did you name your farm? Because I see that it is not your initials, and if you have 5 kids in that amount of time, presumably you didn't just name it after the first 2 and then be like, to hell with the rest of you, you know? So I'm wondering I love the stories behind how people come up with farm names. So please tell us.
So we actually let our kids name the farm. All of our kids start with K's or B's, and that wasn't a planned thing until the 4th kid, and we're like, crap, like we've already,
We have a pattern now.
yeah, we got to stick to the pattern. So when we decided to start doing this more, less as a hobby farm, more as a business, we asked our kids, what do you want the name to be? And they came up with K and B. So all their names start with K or B, and that's how we got our farm.
So, Shawnee, first, I'm from Iowa, and Arlene is from Eastern Canada. Is there grass in Arizona? Because I feel like everything from basically East Texas to California is just sand. And I assume I'm wrong about that if people are like pasturing cattle. What's the terrain like where you are?
So we're in northern Arizona, so it's super mountain, rocky. There are pastures and people do grow, but where we're at, like our growing season, if you grow hay, you get 2, maybe 3 cuttings if you're lucky. Whereas, you know, northern or southern Arizona, you can get 10 to 12 cuttings. And so it's a lot harder to grow where we're at. It's super rocky. The rocks multiply and produce more rocks. But if you have water, that's the struggle in Arizona is you can do anything if you have those water rights. To get those water rights, you've got to be a millionaire or it's got to be in your birthright passed down from your great grandparents because to get water in Arizona, it is near impossible.
So you talked about wanting to be able to grow crops. So with all of the livestock that you guys are raising, are you buying in all of your feed or essentially all of it?
Yeah, which is not ideal. Nobody wants to do that. We're in the process of trying to find grazing land, but it is so expensive here. I mean, in the Phoenix area, you're looking for just 1 acre irrigated pasture is roughly 50 to 100,000. Where we're at, it's cheaper. Isn't that crazy? But where we're at, it's cheaper, but those water rights, nobody gives up their water rights. So it's just stupid here.
For our listeners who still can't see my face at $100,000 an acre was substantially more than my face about 5 kids in 6 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I know, Shawnee, I lived in western Montana for a few years, and especially the battles between rights to water for trout fishing, which is huge money for tourism and such, and rights to water for anything else. People still shoot each other over it, and I think it's something we thankfully do not experience in places where it does rain occasionally, but it really does bring a very different sensibility to things. Because, like, we're having a drought, but stuff is kind of still growing. It's never going to be like northern Arizona dry.
Right, and a drought where we live means maybe a month without rain, not.
Yeah. I think it's been a few months since we've had any real rain, but nothing like what you guys have.
Well, and the pulling out guns here is actually a real thing. I mean, we were talking about moving 15 minutes more north from where we're at. And they're like, why would you move there? Like, they literally will pull out their guns if, like, you threaten their water supply. I'm like, oh, it's the Wild West here, I guess. I don't know. But it's a very real thing here when you talk about water and water rights. I mean, they will stop at nothing to protect their water rights.
One more question, because I feel like this is something haven't been talking about enough on the show. What sort of predator issues are you guys dealing with?
Oh,
Because I feel like that depends so much on what species you're raising and where you are. Like, Arlene's dairy cows are probably not in a lot of danger from predators, in a barn in Canada, being cattle. But lambs on pasture can be a little more tempting.
yep. We actually have a decent sized wolf population here. Coyotes are a really big threat. We get quite a few coyotes, and right where we're at, we're next to state land. So even though people are running cattle right next to us, we still get probably a dozen coyotes throughout the season that come and help themselves. But we've got the wolf population that's now breeding with the coyotes, which is complete disaster, creating this whole hybrid of the worst things of the both animals combined. And so it is a real threat out here. A lot of cattle ranchers lose quite a bit of cows because of predators and stupid hunters.
Yeah, we haven't lost any, but people in the Midwest certainly have lost cattle to enthusiastic hunters who are more enthusiastic and less looking at what they're shooting.
The hunters that have never hunted before.
Yeah. Maybe you shouldn't start with something that large.
No.
So what is your ag background then?
I actually have no ag background. My husband grew up playing sports. It was sports 24/7. It wasn't till our oldest was, and we had kind of talked about the idea, oh, we should do 4-H, that would be fun. But I mean, 3 years old, my kids started playing sports. Like, that's how I grew up. That's just what I was going to do. We threw our kids into sports right away. And I realized really quickly that, and this was just my opinion. I want to preface that this is my opinion, but I did not, it was not the same. Sports was not the same with my kids as it was when I was a kid. I mean, I feel like it's become a very selfish environment, at least in our area, where you're out for yourself. You don't, I don't know. It's hard to explain, and I don't want to put it down because sports is really great for kids, but it just became an environment that we just didn't want our kids in. And so my husband randomly came home one day, and it was the middle of November, and I was like, by the way, I just committed to buying lambs, and we've got to drive 3 hours one way to go get lambs. So we got to go before it gets too damn dark. And so we kind of just jumped into ag, about 5 years ago. I mean, we had been around animals, but nothing like, I mean, I had chickens growing up. That's about as far as into ag I got when I was a kid.
Chickens really are the gateway drug. Like, no joke. And I mean, regarding we're not really a sports ball family. But I feel like when we were younger, sports was about teams and getting your kid out of the damn house. Like, Midwest, like, we are solidly a sports place, but it was about getting your kids out of the house, like kind of the same as why people send their kids to 4-H. Like if it was about raising sheep, they could just do that at home. If it was about throwing things, they could do that at home. But it seems like it's gotten so competitive at such a young age. Like, I don't remember anybody really caring if they won or lost until high school when we were younger. And now it's like first graders. And, everybody's on traveling teams for everything. And I don't want to sound too like back in my day, shaking my fist at the sky, but people need to chill. And that's on the adults. That's not the kids.
No, but that's how it is in our areas. If you don't start playing when you're young and you focus on one, I mean, you can play other ones, but if you're not good at that one sport and you're not on the traveling team or the club teams, you have a hard time making high school sports in my area, or where I grew up, I should say. And it's just sad. Like, that sports is great, but we wanted something more for our kids. It wasn't the fit for our family anymore.
So how do you go from some lambs in the back of a minivan, potentially? I'm not sure how you transported those first ones.
Also, sorry, Arlene, Shawnee, I'm going to assume that you were living in an apartment or like in suburban Phoenix when you bought these lambs and were just like, maybe no one will notice. Like, this will be fine.
We actually lived in this old, built in the 60s barn, like the red barn, white trim, pull through on the bottom with living quarters up top. And they had enclosed it, but it was a Jimmy rig job. Like, it was not done very well. So like the master bedroom and the kitchen were upstairs. The kids' bedrooms and the family room was downstairs. And I mean, we were on 3 acres, but we were renting from a friend, and so we didn't really even use a full acre at the time. Like, there were stalls, but we didn't know anything at this point. Like,
you were basically trapped into this. Like, you were completely innocent in this. It's, nature abhors a vacuum, and especially if someone's already had chickens, if you give them a barn and then you give them more than like 20 square feet, it's going to happen. Like, they should be glad you didn't start with horses. That's all I'm saying.
There's
Oh, now here we go.
we started with a mini pony because my husband, that was the deal when we got married. He's like, absolutely no horses. I will let you do whatever you want, no horses. And then my daughter watched that walk ride rodeo show on Netflix and fell in love with barrel racing. And she's like, I want a horse. I want to ride in the NFR. And I'm like, I don't even know what the NFR is. Like, and next thing you know, we have this sassy mini pony, and he needed a friend, so I got lambs.
So along the way, you've gone from a pony and some lambs to producing your own protein and selling it to others, and also like teaching others how to preserve food and all that kind of stuff. So how does one go? Is it gradual, or did you have kind of points where you're like, we're really going to focus on this now? Like this is going to be a thing, or has it kind of just been a rolling progression?
I am a fake it till I make it. And I have not made it yet, but I jump into things without thinking about it. I put the cart before the horse, or is it the horse before the cart? Whatever. I do everything backwards.
You got the pony first. Do you have a cart yet?
Yep, I got and I had no idea what to do with the pony. Oh my gosh. But that's been our entire experience. I get a really good idea, and then it either just arrives at my house and I tell my husband I have no idea how it got here, or I have to convince him with some extra leaven and say, this is a great idea. We should do this. And after he gets the extra leaven, then he's like, all right, you can do it.
Shawnee, not to be crass, but now we know how you ended up with 5 kids in 6 years.
She wanted to get pigs, so
that's
what it took.
I took one for the team there.
So, what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way? And honestly, I love when people just get into farming because it's what they want to do, because you're not dealing with all that, like, I'm the 4th generation. I don't want to farm, but I can't let everybody down. And, you're here because you want to be. And presumably, if you didn't want to be, you could just sell it all and go get a job where you actually make money. So,
we spend we've had a lot of hard lessons. We'll say that. We've spent a lot of money where we look back and we're like, crap, that was not, we could have done something totally different and it been 100% better. Like and because we didn't grow up in this, and where we grew up in the Phoenix area, we didn't know a lot of people doing this. I mean, it's not like I could call up my neighbor or my best friend and say, hey, I got this problem. My horse is colicking, or my cow just, I don't know, is having things come out of Tuha. Like, what do I do? We had no idea. And so we have learned some really hard and very expensive and, I mean, just physically draining lessons in life while raising animals. And we still don't know what we're doing. We're still, I joke all the time, we should be the wannabe farm, because we don't know what we're doing even after 5 years. We really are faking it till we make it. And one day we'll look back and go, oh my gosh, we figured it out. But today's not that day. And I mean, just little things like quality of feed. We learned so much just about what is necessary to feed our pigs. We need a good solid protein. We need a good solid lysine. Just those kind of things that in the beginning we were like, let's go to Tractor Supply and just buy our bag of feed and hope this works. And so some things were really expensive to learn. Some things were like, oh my gosh, we should have known. But we've learned a lot. I know that's a very broad statement, but we have learned a lot.
It feels like sometimes there are so many resources out there now. I mean, there's so many YouTube channels and people, selling courses, and like the resources are almost endless. And yet it's also at the same time hard to figure out who to trust. So how have you found looking for, the kinds of answers that you're looking for when you jump in with both feet and, bring home some lambs? Who are your kind of go-to resources, or how do you figure out what the next steps are?
We've made some really good friendships along the way. And those solid friends, like the lady we bought our pigs from, has been absolutely phenomenal. And because of her, we've gotten more into pigs, and I learned those things like lysine is super important. It needs a good solid mineral pack. So making those friendships along the way has really helped. Getting a vet that works well with us was really important to us. One that understood us and wasn't, like your typical vet or even doctor that's like, these are the rules. This is the rule book. You're not following the rules. It was just nice to find a vet that was like, okay, here's your options. Da, 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 da. Okay, thank you. Because we've had many situations where we're like, crap, do we put down this animal? Do we do this? And finding that vet to say, hey, here's your options. This is what this option looks like. Here's this other option. We're like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, we were never given options before. And so finding finding those key friendships and the vet was really huge for us.
So as your kids have grown up, what are some of the ways that, I mean, obviously in the naming of the farm, they were pretty critically involved, but how are they involved now, and how has that looked as they've gotten older?
Well, we've gone to them multiple times and said, okay, if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to feed animals, because, I mean, the oldest is 13. So we started doing this when he was about 8. And the whole time we've said, this is a family effort. If you don't want to do this, or at any point in time you're done, please tell us, because we can't do all this. I can't homeschool. I can't run the farm. I can't help my husband with his air conditioning business. We can't do all the things if it's not a family effort. So if there's any point in time that you're like, hey, I'm done, I hate feeding pigs, okay, let's talk about it. Let's change up our plan. And our kids have actually been quite the opposite. We start with one thing and they're like, we want to do this. All right, then we bring in some Jersey cows because now they want to show cows and they want to milk cows and they want to do this and that. And so our farm has actually grown, I mean, because of me, because I've wanted it, but also because my kids have wanted to try other things. And so, I mean, at our house, like, I don't go out in the mornings and feed. And I know that sounds awful, but my kids are in charge of feeding. And the deal is I'll make breakfast, I'll get the morning stuff going, you go feed animals, and everyone's agreed to that. And again, if at any point in time we want to change things up, come in, let's talk about it. Let's revisit our little family plan on how this is working, and we'll go from there. If you don't want to feed the sheep and you're complaining about sheep, all right, let's be done with sheep. That's less money on my feed bill every month. But it has to be a family effort for everything that we've got going to make this business work.
Our goal as podcasters is to create a program that makes you feel less alone as a farming, ranching, or homesteading parent, but we can't do it alone.
Supporting Barnyard Language on Patreon helps us cover production costs and ensures the future of the show, but you'll also gain access to exclusive perks and behind-the-scenes content.
Your support enables us to continue bringing you the thought-provoking conversations and inspiring stories week after week. So if you find value in what we're doing and want to be part of the Barnyard community, head over to patreon.com/barnyardlanguage and choose a tier that suits you.
How are you incorporating the homeschooling side of things into all of the other stuff? Because, I mean, I know there are lots of ways that homeschooling and farming go really well together, and we talk to lots of people who are doing both. My mind can't quite get wrapped around it, but I know that for lots of people it works really well. So how does it work for your family?
So I was actually not a fan of homeschooling until COVID hit, and just how everything was going in the Phoenix area with schools. We actually decided to pull out of our kids out of school. And now if you ask them, do you want to go back to school? They're like, heck no, we're good. But it's been nice homeschooling because really in 2 to 3 hours, 4 if they're fighting me, we're done with school. They're outside riding their horse, practicing for their gymkhana competition, or they're outside working their lambs, or we just had babies. And so, they're out taking care of the pigs. And it's nice because we homeschool, if they stay up late, because we have a mama pig, and my 2 girls are the ones that love to go out and sit with mama pig when she has her babies, and they'll sit out there till midnight. And so homeschooling is giving us that flexibility to allow my kids to do what they want showing wise, but also, when those babies come, they love to be outside taking care of the mom, taking care of the babies. If we've got something injured, they're out there helping. I mean, it's given them the freedom to be a kid and explore their interests.
So what you already mentioned that your husband has an off-farm job, or does he own his own business?
Yep. So he owns his own air conditioning business.
Right. So you have a business and a bunch of kids and a farm. So I know that the word balance is kind of a curse word on this show. So I don't want to use that word, but how does it, I'm sure that every day not everything gets done, but how does your family make time for all the things that are a priority for you?
We don't. I am a shit show. I'm a hot mess. Like my My worst trait, um, I am a procrastinator. I work great under pressure. I wait till the last second to do everything. So nothing works actually. We just do the best that we can to get accomplished what we can.
I love that answer. Um, we often end up asking our guests about the time when they first became parents because I feel like it brings up a lot of memories around kind of like that transition from not being a parent to being a parent. And I'm also curious about, as you added extra or more children in pretty quick succession. So what was life like when you had your first and how was that transition for you?
It's funny, I thought life was so busy. It was so busy. I mean, I was still working. We had our first. I worked the first year. My husband's schedule was nice because he was home 3 days a week with him, and then my mom had him the other days. And but it was busy. And now that we've added five more kids, and I don't even know how many animals, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to go back to the simplicity of my hardest chore of the day was like wiping someone's butt or scrubbing the toilets.
So, Shawnee, what was your experience like of having your kids that close? Because my kids are 16 months apart, and there's just the two of them. But I was kind of freaked out about it at first, and then a friend whose kids are, I think, 13 months apart said, it's harder on the parents at first, but it's easier on the kids. And I feel like for us, in a lot of ways, it was easier for me because when you're already dealing with one in diapers, having two in diapers is really not worse. I mean, because you're already doing it, and there's a lot of things that you just do twice as much of, but at the same time, rather than like the idea of totally potty training one and then waiting a couple of years and then having to start over just kills me. Like, just the concept. So I'm wondering are your kids all best friends? Because I feel like there's this idea too that they will just adore each other at all times. And two, since you're homeschooling and that, they don't get that break from each other that they might if they were going somewhere.
They are best friends 1 minute and they are the worst enemies 2 seconds later. And it's funny because I'm not a very scheduled person. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. Like I can't schedule things in advance most of the times because I forget. And so I feel like the kids just added to the chaos and it was easy for me. It probably is not easy for others, but for me it was just, all right, let's just add one more. Like what's one more? After you've already had one and two, three, four, five is not a big deal because they're already crying, they're already whining, you're already changing diapers. So it really, to me, it wasn't a big deal, but I also don't know any different. So it just, I don't know. It was just chaos. It was really good chaos. And we learned things like you don't go to a park. You don't take five kids to a park.
I didn't take five kids anywhere. It just,
You
oof.
don't. I took them. Oh, I didn't do this ever again, but I took them Black Friday shopping, and I got those little, what are they, like those little clips, and I tied rope from one big clip on me, and I had five little strings and clips, and I clipped everybody so they couldn't run away from me. It was the best invention, but the looks that I got, I was waiting for CPS to show up because
You kind of almost look like a spider, like that there's like
yes,
trailing behind you.
Super judgy of child leashes until I had a kid who was a runner and I was pregnant with another one. And I was like,
they're the best inventions,
you know, I get why people think it's ridiculous, but they're going to be a lot more judgy if my child like sprints out into the road and gets run over.
right?
So,
I didn't lose a child on
but
Black Friday.
how did you not get tangled up around
Oh,
stuff?
we did.
Because I can't walk two dogs without getting tangled up on street signs. So, five children seems like a real test.
It was a nightmare actually, and my only saving grace is my mom was with me, so my mom kind of stood on one side and kind of corralled as I was kind of corralling on the other side, but they were all still attached to me, so wherever they went, I was going. So And Black Friday shopping, that was not a good idea. There's hundreds of people everywhere. And my thought process was, I'm not going to lose a kid. I didn't think about everybody else and my kid's still trying to go 5 different directions.
It seems like an easy way to get drawn and quartered. Just right in the middle of Walmart, which is kind of what it feels like to go Black Friday shopping anyway. So I feel like, too, when you have the momentum of having one baby, having another one it's like when you get a couple lambs, and then you're like, what's a pony on top of this? Like, this is fine. But to actually stop and think about it and then decide to have another one is just like,
That's why you don't stop and think, you just do.
See, I feel like you two have similar brains, and I do not, because I have 4 that are much more spread out. And my theory was always I was not going to have the next one until the one previous was sleeping through the night. And none of my kids slept through the night till they were over a year old. So there were no additional babies until at least a year, because I had to at least sleep through the night once before I would even consider having the next one around.
in my defense, we weren't expecting the first one after the amount of money we put into trying to have her. So we sure as shit weren't expecting the second one. It's yeah, Shawnee, it's awkward to try and explain to people that we did that much to try to have a baby and then had 2 unexpected surprise babies, because when you stop expecting it, any baby is a surprise.
See, and I was trying to avoid the surprise because I have quite a few friends that have their babies and then there's a 5 or 10 year gap. And I was like, oh, I don't want that. So I was like, let's just get them here and then you get fixed, I get fixed. That way there's no surprises.
Or it'll really, really be a surprise.
So now you just have to sneak the animals in. So Katie has been wanting to get guests on the show with show experience because she feels like she's entering potential territory of her kids wanting to start to show animals. So I have some dairy experience, but sounds like you have sheep, and I think I saw some kids washing chickens on your Instagram feed. So there's some. So give Katie some advice on kids and showing, and especially coming from someone who I'm assuming was not in 4-H as a kid, right? So you don't have any of that experience yourself. So same as the other question, like where are you getting help from, and how are you and your kids learning how to show animals at the same time?
So it goes back to, we just found those key friends. One of the people, the first lambs we bought was from the same lady we bought pigs from, and she was super helpful, but she lived 3-4 hours away. The next year we hooked up with a breeder in our town, and from there it just grew. He introduced us to everybody. My kids made friends with people. The parents were so, like, from day one, the parents were like, here, come here, you need to buy this, go here, do this. I mean, they helped us with everything. Whereas, and that's kind of what drove us away from sports, was I'm not telling you where we got our shoes, I'm not telling you who we practice with and who our coach is and this and that. And it was completely the opposite with 4-H. I mean, I didn't expect it to be so inviting and welcoming for people that really knew nothing. And so the first year was COVID that we started showing, and they ended up shutting county fair down, and it was just a mess. But it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because it allowed my son to learn a lot more, because the next time he really showed was after 2 years of experience. And I mean, my kids did not grow up in this. So we are always kind of bottom of the barrel in showing. I mean, just in our old county where we lived, there was probably 100+ lamb kids. And so I'd always tell my kids, hey, like, we're doing the best we can, but just know going in, like, you're probably not going to win. I'm not the trophy mom, okay? I don't tell them you're going to do great. I give them real expectations. Listen, these kids have been showing for years. Their parents grew up showing. They know what they're doing. Watch them, then go in the show and try and do it. And so from there, they've gotten my attitude. Well, we learned how to show lambs. Now let's show chickens. I'm like, chickens? Really? And now they're like, hey, we raise pigs. Let's show pigs. I'm like, I don't know how to do pigs. I finally have understood lambs, and now my kids are like, let's do dairy cows. I'm like, and I'm the dumb one that's like, absolutely, let's do it. So now we show this next year. We've been showing lambs. This next year we'll show dairy cows, chickens, pigs, and mom's gonna need a lot of caffeine.
So just move into the fair for the week. You're all good.
Oh, it is exhausting, and I spend about $500 on food from Costco, and we bring coolers and chairs, and we just kind of camp out. But I will tell you, my favorite experiences with my children have been in those barns. The friendships, the things they've learned, the camaraderie, even within parents. Um, I mean, I've watched other parents, their children have lost, and they were like, oh my gosh, this kid won. That's so awesome. You didn't see that in sports. And so just having other parents cheer on other kids and they're so excited and they're helping. I mean, it is a week. I mean, when you do the county fairs or little jackpot shows on the weekend, it is a lot of fun. It feels like family to me.
One of the things I really enjoy about showing too that you don't get in school or with sports is that there's such a wide age range too. I mean, I know the ages are a little bit different, but like in our 4-H club, it's from like 9-year-olds to 21-year-olds. So you have like kids who are, done university or college who are in the same club essentially with 10-year-olds, and they can help each other and they can learn from each other. And it's not always, I mean, often it's the older ones teaching the younger ones, but just the fact that they have to learn how to get along and understand each other's, developmental ages, like and do things, and to teach each other and work together as a team. It's different when you're all the same age and all the same kind of emotional maturity, but there is something about having kids of all different ages working together towards common goals that's really neat to watch.
Well, and it's so good for those younger kids to see those older kids. I mean, we go to state fair every October, and there is this boy named Jackson, and he is so great with the little kids, and he's 16 or 17. And he brings his rope, and they're when nobody's showing, he's out there roping the kids, and he'll take them shopping and get them food. Like, I mean, my kids' favorite people when we go to show is the older kids, because they aren't like, oh my gosh, I'm 16, 18, you're 10, we're different. And it's not the same. They're like, hey, come over here, let's work together. And the older kids are phenomenal. Like, they're probably the big reason why we have continued to do this, because they don't push my kids away who don't know anything. They're like, hey, come over here. Let me help you learn how to milk this cow. Let me help you learn how to clip this cow. We don't know anything about clipping dairy cows. We still don't. And so we've had the older kids come in and they're like, hey, come over here. Let me help you. Come help me and I'll show you how to do this. And that, I mean, those parents have raised those kids right. And they're phenomenal kids. And it is probably part of my favorite part of those fairs is watching those older kids bring those little ones in, and it's a group effort. It's not an individual me. It is a group effort.
I think it's so great, Shawnee, listening to you talking about your kids being such a part of the decision making on your farm and in your business, because I feel like we see a lot of first generation farmers more in the homesteading space than the farming space, where the parents get all these big ideas. They move the kids from the city to way out in the boondocks, no electricity, no running water, and like, cool, do it. But then they get all this livestock, and then it's the kids' job to do all this stuff. And then the kids get mad because nobody asked them if they wanted to do all this stuff, and they're being forced to. And just the idea that your kids have the stated freedom to say no to things, and that your kids are growing up seeing you try new things and presumably fail at least some of them, and then to keep doing it and to be willing to try more new things. Because I know as a kid, I was around so many adults who always seemed to know what they were doing, it was really hard for me to learn that people start at the beginning of a skill, because if everyone you see is already good at it, you assume that everybody is just good at it, and you're not, and that's a you problem, rather than it took 40 years of practice, but you didn't see it because you weren't alive yet. And I think it's just so great for them to see that.
That's another thing about the showing too, right? Is that you're seeing people at every stage of their progression in terms of, you're watching, you're literally seeing the kids who are doing it for the first time and the ones who've maybe been in the show ring for 10 years and can see what a difference that experience has made and what they've learned along the way, and that it's not just, you do it once or you do it 1 year and then next year you're going to be great at it. That it does take time, and that experience and skill and hard work. I mean, as hard as it is a lesson to learn, it doesn't always mean you're going to be successful because you're working with living animals, right? You can put all the work in and you think this is going to be my year, and your heifer or your pig or whatever animal you have is a jerk that year. And they're like, no, this is not your year. This is your year to learn humility.
Well, it's funny. This year at County Fair, we actually had a situation where my boy had not worked with his lamb, and his lamb was being all the bad words. And I was getting, I'm not a patient mom. Um, that's not a characteristic trait I would say I have. And he was like, I'm done. And my husband was like, okay, fine. You don't have to show ever again. I was so mad. I was like, no, he is showing. He is doing this. I enjoy this. He's doing it. And he's like, no, if he doesn't want to do this, I'm done fighting him. That boy went in that ring and won reserve showmanship. And I was so mad because I was like, we just fought you for the last 2 hours to bathe your lamb and get it ready for the show ring. And you went out there, won second place. And I'm like, okay, so are we still doing this? He's like, absolutely. I'm going to come back and win first place next year. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, help me, please. Because there are some days we do have to fight with our children because in the moment, they don't want to do it. And I'm not the parent to say, you don't want to do this.
Same as us, right?
Yes. But my husband's like, no, if they don't want to do it, we're done. We don't have to do it. It'll save us a lot of money. And I've told my kids that over and over. We spend so much money a month because we didn't grow up in this and we've had to start from scratch to do everything we're doing. That if you aren't 100% committed, we've got to refocus what we're doing, because when everything's costing us more than what our family needs to live off of, we could be going to Disneyland or Hawaii. Like, we could go on vacations. My kids have never been to Disneyland. They remind us all the time. But I'm like, do you see that horse out there? You know how much that horse costs a month to feed and to shoe? And you know how much it costs to actually buy the horse? Okay, that's why we're not going to Disneyland. I'm sorry.
You can name her Disney.
Yes.
I think, too, though, it's so great, especially in ag, to be given the option of saying, I'm done. Because I know in our family, at least, I at least once a year, and my husband at least every 5 years probably, talks about what if we just stopped farming. And our kids are the fifth generation on this farm, so it is a big thing. But looking at it and realizing that we are not done is what gets us to the saying it the next year, because we're not being forced to do it. We could do something else. And that means that we're here because we want to be here. And your kid deciding that he wanted to be there, even when he didn't want to be there, is worth a hell of a lot.
Even if there's a lot of curse words said in between.
As long as he doesn't say I'm in the ring, or if he does, it's under quiet enough that nobody hears it.
I can't promise that.
Yeah, maybe if the judge doesn't hear it.
As long as the judge doesn't hear it, that is a mom win.
Yeah, that's right. Katie, do you have any other show-related questions?
I do. I have one. I feel like the other difference between sports and showing livestock is that a lot of people have gotten this notion that your kid could be an Olympian or a top draft NFL pick or whatever. If you just start them young enough and you just compete hard enough, that's what it will take to be Tiger Woods or whoever. Where in 4-H or, other showing, I I mean, Arlene, I assume there are people who do showing for a living.
I mean, there are probably some people who do some fitting who can make a living at it.
But I mean, it's not a $100 million contract on TV.
No, there's not going to be a lucrative career. I mean, some people more so in like breeding and selling elite genetics, but yeah, it's not like a straight line to do really well in this 4-H show and then here's the contract or the scholarship or
So I mean, generally, you're working really hard because you're working really hard, and you're not on a team. So if you fail or succeed, it's on you. It's not. There's nobody to blame. There's no one to hide behind. It's.
well, you can blame your animal too.
We've had a lot of that happen.
I mean, you can try it, but that's kind of
That was
embarrassing.
when I was a kid. Yeah, when I was a kid, that was my go-to. It was never the fact that I did not like showing and did not lead my animal enough. It was always the heifer's fault. How many times can she be in heat in one season? Every week, every fair.
Miracle cow. And I feel like that's the other thing we don't say often enough is if your kid doesn't like showing, they don't need to show. There's still even plenty of 4-H stuff they can do. Because I did one horse show and I hated it, and that was the end of that. I am not that person. I'm just not there for it. Anyway, that wasn't really a question, was it?
Do you have any other showing questions though?
Show whites. Are there any tricks? I don't own any white clothing, so.
Or are you just scared of the whole idea?
It's the worst. We buy new clothes every year.
All right.
Yeah, it's finding the white pants is one of the biggest struggles, but everyone, that's another resource whenever everyone helps each other out. I know on Facebook, it's always like, this store has white pants this year that are boot cut. Go and
Yes.
buy them. Old Navy, this is the year.
So I should be stocking up on these white pants when I see them and then selling them black market on the 4-H show parent circuit.
Pretty much. I think I've given a lot of them away now, but I had a box in my closet that was just a box of white clothes in varying sizes. So what is your favorite thing about raising kids on the farm?
Honestly, it has been learning side by side because we don't know what we're doing. They know just as much as I do, probably more.
You can make it a homeschooling lesson, right? here's a weird thing that's happening. Research that and tell us what the solution is.
I feel like every day it is a learning experience, but it's something we're doing together. I can't go out and do one job by myself most of the time. It needs at least 2 or 3 people. And so it really has become a family effort. I feel like it's made us a lot closer. But learning things like, okay, what do we do when the pig cuts its leg? Now my kids know it just as much as I do, and they can be on their own taking care of it. I mean, there's been quite a few times that I have had to run an errand or go pick up a niece or nephew or something, and a pig farrows. And my kids are out there taking care. I mean, they're pretty do it yourself type things, but my kids are out there assisting and they don't need me. They just keep me updated. Hey, there's another one. Oh, we've got another one. Oh, this has happened. They know how to do just as much as I do. And so it's nice because they're so confident in what they're doing, maybe a little cocky, but they're confident that, if I have to run to the grocery store or if I have to go do a meat delivery all day long, they know what they're doing. And so it's been fun learning side by side. A lot of cuss words, okay? A lot of cuss words from mom and dad, and I'm sure kids have thought it, but there's some very frustrating moments, some very hard moments, some very heartbreaking moments, but we've done it all together.
That leads all into the question I was going to ask next, which is what is the biggest parenting struggle when it comes to your life on the farm?
Because I have very little patience, and one mistake can hurt or kill you. And so that is the frustrating thing is I hope looking back, my kids are like, okay, mom isn't a complete asshole. She really does love us. She wasn't screaming at me because I'm a dipshit. She was screaming because she was protecting me. And so I hope my kids look back and don't resent or hate certain experiences because of how mom responded. And so that, I think that's the hardest thing, is for me to just slow down, to focus. It's okay. Everyone breathe, woo-saw. But also for my kids to know that I'm doing it all out of love. It may not come across nicely, but I'm genuinely either scared something's going to happen, or that is just my initial reaction. But I want them to enjoy this. I want them to, in 20, 30 years, go, gosh, what a life we had. We had the best childhood. I want that for my kids. I would love if we could grow our operation to where all 5 of my kids are employed on our farm. That is my goal in life. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I want my kids to know that this was a fun experience and not mom's a basket case and we out.
Peace out, Mom.
Yeah.
What is a piece of farm-specific parenting advice that you would want to share with someone else who's living this life?
Patience. I get stressed and I get so worked up that, oh my gosh, I've got so many things going, and, trying to homeschool and run the 2 businesses. And sometimes I just forget to breathe. And it kind of goes back to the last question. I want my kids to genuinely enjoy this. I want them to love the decision they've made, because ultimately it was our decision to start this, but it's their decision to keep it going. And I think just that quality time, like, take that extra 2 minutes to just give them a hug after you just screamed at them for opening the gate and letting the cows out. It's okay for mom and dad to say, sorry, I lost my shit.
Yeah, I think that is really important because, like you said, sometimes that yelling is out of fear, or yeah, sometimes it's frustration too. But yeah, when we're always on edge and worried that the next thing could be the thing that hurts someone in our family, it's hard to stay calm all the time. But yeah, to be able to say afterwards, the reason I yelled it's because I was worried about you. I was scared, and I'm sorry it wasn't the best reaction, but this is where it came from. That does definitely goes a long way.
I think that falls right into the same thing of knowing that parents are humans and that adults are humans. And if people seem horrified by you apologizing to your kids, that's a problem with them, because that is one I've encountered. And you really have to wonder about those folks. Anyway, we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
It's funny. I actually asked my daughter that yesterday. We were going to get pig feed, and I was like, hey, this is a podcast I'm going to be on tomorrow. Why don't you listen? And so it got to that question. And I looked at her and I go, if you could pick one category, what would you sweep in? And she goes, all of them.
Wow, I
I
love
go,
the comment.
okay, pick one, darling, pick one. And she goes, well, my favorite's still sheep. And I'm like, I honestly don't have an answer. I just genuinely love watching my kids show, whether it's cows, whether it's sheep, whether it's pigs, chickens. Oh my gosh, that was such an experience this year. First year showing chickens, we had no idea what we were doing, and she won grand champion. And but just watching them show, I don't care what they're showing. I Whatever they want to show, I would watch it. But to sweep one category, I don't know. They're all, even the chicken, as crazy as it sounds, is a lot of fun. And so I guess we'd sweep them all. If my daughter had her choice, we'd sweep them all.
You kind of sound like you could win at enjoying your kids. And that is worth a hell of a lot right there. Because there's plenty of times kids. Anyway.
The family confidence. Perfect. Top cheerleader. So we'll go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and want to submit yours, you can either go to our SpeakPipe or our email and submit them. Katie, what are you cussing or discussing this week?
Kindness. I feel like sometimes we're real good at being nice, but people are so competitive about shit that really doesn't matter. Like, your kid might beat their kid at sports if they tell you where they bought their shoes. Like, what the hell is that? And I know what you mean, but folks get so focused on the idea that someone else might get a leg up or somehow get ahead of them in some way if anybody helps anybody with anything. And there are so very, very, very few places where that could possibly A, be true, or B, actually have an impact, or C, where being kind isn't more important than any impact that might have. And people just need to quit being dicks and actually be kind to each other. It's life is too short and it's too hard, even when it's going well. And we don't need to make anybody else's life harder. And we don't need anybody making our lives harder. So, there's that. Shawnee, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Teenagers. We're in the preteen and teenage attitudes. Uh, uh, I don't know whether to drink more. And really, the hardest stuff I drink is Pepsi because if I took alcohol, I would be an alcoholic with how the attitudes are going around here. Maybe I need to do more yoga. I don't know. But I am over this preteen, teenage, everything pisses me off and you're the problem. And even though, I, for example, yesterday, I gave up my entire day to the horse lessons and working with the horses. And that's all I did. Did I clean my house? No. I barely made dinner at 8 o'clock at night. And then I asked the preteen to clean the kitchen this morning, and it was rah, rah, rah. Like, everything I did was for you yesterday, not one thing for me, and this is what I get treated? Like, ugh. I'm ready for Jesus.
And the thing is, like, rationally, as a fellow parent of teens, I know that it's completely developmentally appropriate. Like, in my head, I'm like, they're supposed to be selfish. This is how they survive, right? Like, there's lots of reasons why teenagers are totally focused on themselves. And yet, when you're the one at the receiving end, and especially, I'm guessing, as someone who's homeschooling and can't at least send some of that attitude to a teacher, that yeah, you get the full brunt of all the teen and preteen. And sometimes I think the preteens are worse. Like the teenagers, I feel like at least they are starting to gain that little bit of perspective, right? Where it's like, remember yesterday? Okay, yeah. But yeah, like in that 10, 11, 12 that's a really hard spot to be.
My daughter is almost 12, and she's my one that's like, I'll sweep it all, mom. She is so passionate and so driven, but when she wants to, she'll cut your throat, man.
I have a daughter like that too, Shawnee, and I'll tell you that sometimes I wonder if encouraging her strength of character was really a good idea, because she does tend to bring it home.
I remember when my sister, there's three of us girls and then a boy. When my sister turned 12, my mom saying that she was grateful she'd never have to raise another 11-year-old girl again. So if you go by my mom's calculations, 11 is the worst age for girls. So how many more girls do you have after her?
I have one more.
Okay, so if you can get through 11.
They're back to back. So I have a boy and then two girls and then the two boys at the end. And the two girls, I mean, I'm so glad God blessed me with two boys at the end. My girls are my best friends. They are the best help. But when they're done with you, they will let you know.
They can hurt you like emotionally more than anyone else.
I've never cried so much about what a girl says to me than I do my own children, my own girls.
They're mean girls and they live in my house.
Yes.
Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
So today I'm going to cuss and discuss This is kind of a very specific example, but in general, it's the kind of like difference between what the internet might tell you and what actually happens on the ground. So here's the scenario. So my lovely nephew hurt or not hurt. He rode off his vehicle. He was not hurt. His vehicle was no longer working. So he lives about 45 minutes away, but was going to rent a vehicle in my town through his insurance. And so he asked very nicely if I could go pick him up and bring him to my town so he could pick up this rental vehicle. So no problem. I drive and pick him up, bring him back here. He had talked to someone on the phone. They were supposed to be open till 5. There was a vehicle there waiting for him. He had a confirmation number. But the reality was the person who works at that particular rental place in my hometown, according to the little sticky note on the door, works till 4, not till 5. So he left work early. I drove an hour and a half round trip to get him here for a place that was then closed. There was no car. Well, there was a car, but there was no one to give him the keys. And then, of course, you call a rental car company and it's just, an automated, like, stay on the line for an hour. And then you might find a human who works somewhere else, maybe not even in this country, to try and talk to them about the fact that you now don't have a rental car. So just like, sometimes you just want to talk to a real human being and be like, okay, if I show up at 5 o'clock, will you actually be there to provide the service that I require? So yeah, in the end, I had to then drive him back again to his home and then back home again. So I got to make about 3 hours worth of driving for no rental car at all. And he still had to figure it out the next day because he still needed a vehicle. So yeah, sometimes we just need.
Now I feel really bad for how frustrated I was yesterday that the pharmacy closed for lunch. Because at least I only waited like 8 minutes and I was already upset. So.
And then my associated cussing and discussing is then driving and watching for deer, because the second round trip was then in the evening and at night after sunset, and I have had a couple run-ins with deer. And after the whole like trying to get a rental car, I was like, I can't afford the time it would take for my vehicle to get into a deer collision. So I was just like, yeah, eyes peeled, waiting for the deer to jump in front of me. Thankfully that round I didn't have any.
I will say, Arlene, and I know I said this to you, but it was really nice when you visited that I didn't have to warn you about deer, because you already knew they were a thing.
I know all about that, yes. I think lifetime I've had 3 deer collisions, or was it 4? Yeah, at least 3. They're not fun. Anyway, on that note, Shawnee, we want to thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing about your family and your farm. If people want to find out about where you are online, see some kids washing chickens, learn about what you guys are doing on the farm, where should they find you?
Everything is KB Farm and Pantry, whether it's our website, our Instagram, our Facebook, our TikTok. We're on all the things. So
that is fantastic. Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.